This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and unfortunately, there is a communication array malfunction over with Patrick's home, so he is not joining us this week, but we have the amazing Hayley Stoddart from Standard Orbit. Hayley, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me and asking me. I'm excited.
Now, this is your first time on The Edge, the main show?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, tell our listeners a little bit in case they aren't listening to Standard Orbit, which you guys should be because it's amazing. So tell us a little bit of your Trek story and then what you think of Discovery.
Yeah. So my Trek story, I grew up on TNG, not watching it when it originally aired because I think I was 5 when it started, but that's the one I grew up watching. I remember going to Generations with my dad, and I do remember leaving the theater being really confused about what I had just watched.
Right.
And now I cry when I watch it just because I know that, anyway, so reasons. And kind of fell out of it after TNG, didn't really watch anything afterwards. It wasn't on my radar. And it might have been 2010 or 11. No, let's see. It was 2012. I was working at Old Navy and we got shirts in, and it's a men's shirt. I know other people have them because I've seen them, and it says Trekkie on it. And I bought it, and I had started, of course, watching Trek. It was my thing. I'd watch it on BBC America when I was back in school at that time. So that was my reward for studying, or if I needed a break from studying.
Yeah.
And bought a lanyard. And then a couple years later, I went to Vegas and I went to my first STLV for a day. And it's spiraled from there, as now I am now a co-host on Standard Orbit. So yeah, it's just been in the last few years that I've fully embraced this as my love. Discovery, I enjoy it. It's not my favorite. I'm not super gung-ho and in love with it like a lot of people are. And that's fine because we're all allowed to like something or dislike something as much as we want. But, and I will say it took me probably at least halfway through before I was really kind of like, oh, okay, I can be on board with this.
Yeah.
But by the end, I was really enjoying it, and I'm enjoying the characters and the stories that they're showing. So it's great.
Yeah. I like having this little break until season 2 because I'm learning to like it. And, obviously hosting here The Edge, really getting into the characters and the story and I'm like, man, this is really good Trek. I'm really enjoying it. So.
Yeah. And I have yet to rewatch it just because I'm currently doing a DS9 rewatch. And
yes. Aren't we about at the same place? I just finished season 3.
And I'm a little bit ahead of you now at this point, I think. I think we were about at the same place, and then you kind of got ahead because I'm almost done with season 4.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, my summer got a little busy, so.
You've been traveling. I'm stuck at home until STLV in a couple weeks. But so I am going to get around to rewatching it. just because you want that refresher before season 2. And I enjoy having breaks. I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, when is it going to come back on? But, as a fan of another series that only had 5 seasons, and we had to wait a year between each season, and there was only 10 episodes a season.
Right.
I've learned to wait, and it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, today, very excited, we're going to be talking about Dr. Hugh Culber. Now, he obviously is working in the as a medical officer, as a physician. He's a lieutenant commander, but he's not the chief medical officer, which I find interesting because I think we see maybe a nurse or assistant, but we never see like the main doctor. And of course, we knew that coming in, that we're not going to see the main people, that this is going to be more of a lower decks. But it's just interesting that we only see him. What did you think about that and his position in, the medical field, that we just really only see him?
I was thinking about this today, and I thought, in my head, I'm going to say he's the main. He's, air quotes, chief medical officer, even though he's not. And then I was thinking about it that, yes, they're kind of doing this where we're not really going to see those people. But I'm also wondering maybe if they are and they're just not saying it. So in the show itself, he is the chief medical officer, but they don't say chief medical officer because we don't really hear that very often. It's like in TNG, it's always Dr. Crusher, or in TOS, it's Bones, and so I don't think necessarily we hear that phrase very much. It's just a label that maybe you find online, or maybe he's in the scripts that, we don't necessarily see. So in my head, he is. But it's just not said in the show itself.
Right. So, and I was also thinking about okay, so we've seen him, he obviously fixes Stamets a couple times, he gets knocked out with his broken nose and everything. And then when Stamets is in the spore drive and, Culber helps him with that. He obviously works with Tyler, which I'm sure we will discuss a little bit later. And works on Landry a little bit unsuccessful because the tardigrade really got to her and he was unable to save her. So from that, we've seen his work. So I'm just going to ask, how do we compare him with the Bones, Crusher versus Pulaski or Bashir or the Doctor on Voyager or Phlox? Would you want Culber working on you? Where does he rank amongst the other doctors in Star Trek?
He's going to probably... So I'm not a completist, so I haven't watched Voyager or Enterprise, because again, earlier I said I haven't. That was out of my radar. So if we're going with Bones and Dr. Crusher, Dr. Pulaski will counter, I guess.
But that's always a fun debate on TNG.
And Bashir, I'm probably, he's going to be tied with Bashir for me. And so I'm a Dr. Crusher and then Bones, and then it's going to be tied with Dr. Bashir. So I'll put him at third with Dr. Bashir for me.
Yeah, as I was, thinking about this myself, I'm like, yeah, man, he's really good like Bashir. And now that I'm in my DS9, I'm seeing Bashir is very creative and is willing to take risks. And, I'm really liking Dr. Bashir the more that I am watching DS9. The Crusher Pulaski debate, I'm going to put Culber actually above Crusher and Pulaski. So yeah, it's interesting. I think Doctor on Voyager is great too. And then there's Phlox. I mean, they're just all so different, but I am really enjoying Culber and his contributions that he is making. I'm wondering what's going to happen in season 2, if we're going to get a new doctor, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we can't have a starship without a doctor.
It's true. Yeah, it's interesting to think about that, just because you do wonder what's going to happen. I mean, we did see a few others in the background, so you wonder if we're just going to see more, or they could pull the whole, we just don't really see medical. You know, no one goes to sick bay, you know, unless it's something major. So they could pull that whole thing where we just don't see it for a while.
Yeah, that's very true. The writers could just say, all right, go to sick bay, and then never show us, you know, and that
exactly.
It's being taken care of, and it's not part of the storyline anymore.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's happening, but you're just not going to see it kind of thing. That would be my thing, which would be really sad, because honestly, those white uniforms, oh man.
I know, they're smart looking.
The first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I agree. But I'd always wonder, like, if they're white, like when he was working on Stamets and his bloody nose and everything, I'm like, oh no, don't get your uniform dirty. You know? I mean, at least Crusher had the jacket, you know?
That's true. So I will say this. So, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but there's a book series that I read, and it's, the first book is set in the year like 2050. So there's been all these advances and stuff, and it's mystery. So the main character, she's, homicide detective. But they have this spray that they can put on like their hands and shoes instead of wearing booties and gloves. And it protects their hands and their shoes from getting anything on them from a crime scene. So in my head, their uniforms are treated with something that it just like doesn't even affect them at all.
I love that. Yes.
Because, I mean, really, you would think, oh my gosh, it's a white uniform. And I know a lot of people who were talking about it. It's a white uniform, and you're dealing with medical blood, all this other stuff, fluids.
Yeah.
That thing ain't going to stay white. So in my head, they're treated that it just doesn't even stick. It just repels off it.
Okay. I'm sold. That's now my new headcanon. So let's talk about, because he did help Stamets quite a bit. So we learn, oh shoot, I didn't write down the episode. The time loop one.
Magic.
Yes, magic to make the same as man go
yes.
mad. Okay, so in that one, we learn where Stamets and Culber met. And it seems that Culber was humming some Caecilian opera, and that attracted Stamets. And I thought, wow, that was so interesting. And the interplay that they had, like as they were describing how they met, you know, just sort of, when I was watching, I was like, well, this isn't how you start a relationship, because they were sort of sparring with each other back and forth, you know, but then it just sort of developed. So what do you think about this relationship that they have together?
I actually like it. I think it's great that it wasn't an automatic connection in how many of us see connections and relationships starting. It wasn't this. Obviously, there was that connection between them, and there was probably some maybe love at first sight, quote unquote. But I appreciate it, because I don't think everybody's relationships starts 100% amicably. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's going to be those tensions in it anyway down the road. And so I like that it kind of, oh, well, you know, you're kind of annoying, and I don't know if I like you all that much, but I do like you. And so I think that's great, because it shows that they grew to really enjoy each other, and they grew to enjoy each other's company and likes and dislikes, and the fact that they're different. You know, we tend to see relationships as, oh, you have to like all the same things, because otherwise you're not going to have a relationship with someone if you don't like all the same things, and everything has to be the same, and you can't have any dislikes, and you can't have separate things that you enjoy separately and then have the things that you enjoy together. And so I think it's more of a natural relationship in that way, that they were able to share some things, and maybe Stamets still didn't really enjoy the opera, but he grew to love that Hugh had that love for it. And so he would still share it with him, even though it might not have been his favorite. So I appreciate that just because I think it seemed more natural.
Yeah. And when I think about these, this relationship, it's like what you were saying, like this really shows opposites attracting, you know, because you have Stamets, it's a little bit colder, isn't as comfortable sharing his
teddy bear.
Yeah. And then we have Hugh that's, just a teddy bear and is willing to discuss and, you know, his feelings and his care for Stamets. I just really appreciate how they are so opposite just in that aspect. And I think Hugh is definitely dedicated in his career, but it's shown more that Stamets is career driven and, you know, he's going to sacrifice everything for his spore drive, you know, and Culber is definitely dedicated, but like that passion isn't quite the same, but that they make it work. And I love seeing that because so many times, you know, in relationships, you know, you've got your give and your take. You know, and one's going to be, all right, we're going to do this and and then you've got the other one that's, okay, let's come together emotionally and, you know, work things through.
Yeah. And I like that. I think that they played really well together and the writers wrote their relationship and their characters really well for that because it does show not everything is, what's the phrase? Like, daisies and roses and I don't know. I can't think of it. Yeah. It's been a long day. You know, because it's not. In real life, no relationship is like that every single day, 24/7, 365. And I loved the little snippets that we got. I loved the bathroom scene with them brushing their teeth. I think that was just absolutely, that got me right there. I was completely 100% sold on that right there, just because you did see that love and you kind of saw it with Stamets too. Like you could see in that scene. So yeah, he might be that gruff, kind of rough person when he's working, but in private, you know, he has that affection for you and shows it when he needs to and when he feels that he's safe. I think it's a safe environment. And, you know, because we all have those masks that we wear. We have our work face, we have our at-home face. And I think that's really great that it showed that. Yeah.
And I love how both of them felt that they were the lucky one, that the other one loves them. Because, you know, you'd see that in Stamets is like, oh, you know, I'm the lucky one because he loves me. And you got that same feeling with Hugh. And it's like, oh my gosh, they both have that, you know, feeling blessed that the other is in their life. And so they're not going to take it for granted, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So Trek is definitely well known for its one episodic relationships. Like, you know.
Yeah.
You know, a relationship of the week, and every series has done it. So how come this one didn't feel like that? Like the bathroom scene? Is it just because they were living together that you knew that there was a stable relationship? Because I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, we've seen, and even like, okay, so since I've been watching Deep Space Nine, like Kira and Vedic Bareil, yes. You know, that still almost felt like, you know, a relationship of the week. But something was different with Hugh and Paul. And I'm trying to figure out, like, how is it different?
I think because we're getting this kind of more of a lower decks kind of show. Like it feels that way. We very much get the bridge crew, but it's not the 5 or the 7 that we're used to. And story-wise of just following these people, I think we're getting more of these intimate moments. Just like in Magic, you know, we see this big party and everybody's partying, you know, and sometimes we got that in TNG where everybody's having a good time. But a lot of the time it was still for, you know, events. Some ambassador was on the ship or something. And so I think because of that fact that it's kind of got this more lower decks feel, that we're seeing more of those intimacies and those relationships form. And they're able to stretch them out and give them the detail that they need from week to week to week. And it's a continuation because, I mean, we know that there's relationships. And like you said, the relationship of the week, and this person has this one. But I also want to say, you know, we see Troy and Riker, and yeah, they're not always together and they've got other people. Mm-hmm. But I still, in my head, they're still together, even though they might be with somebody else at the time, or they were always together. You know, we have Miles and Keiko. Mm-hmm. And they get married. You know, obviously we never saw them dating, but clearly they were dating at some point leading up to the wedding. So there has been those ones. I just don't think it's ever been part of the main story. And I think with Discovery, they're trying to give us these stories that involve these characters, but give them more depth.
Yeah.
Because I think also TV in general is kind of going towards that, and the viewers want more of this. We want it in depth. We wanted more. Mm-hmm. I wanted more. I was like, hey, I'm ready for like more in depth with these people.
Yeah, it adds, like you said, another layer and complexity in their in their character development as well, where we don't. Yeah, you're right, and I agree with you with the Troy and Riker that they're always together, even though they're doing their own thing, you know. Mm-hmm. But it just, this relationship feels so unique, and maybe it's in part because of the way that the story is being told over this huge, you know, season arc, that the other series didn't have the advantage of doing that, you know. And they did try, definitely, Miles and Keiko and Troy and Riker, but it seems different. I really enjoy the relationship that they have, and felt that they wrote it very well. The actors played it very well. I mean,
oh, definitely.
Wilson Cruz is amazing. I think he's so good. Yes. So
I'm so excited.
So with that relationship, like, we know that Stamets loves Culber. And so when Culber is killed and Stamets ends up in the mycelium network, he sees Culber inside this mycelium network. Now, there's a couple of debates going on about how this is happening. So I want to know what your take is on it, because I have mine, but I want to see what it is. But it seems like, from what I've seen now, and you definitely are more in tune on the social media, and maybe you can add more. So, was Culber actually in the mycelium network, like his afterlife spirit, his, I don't know, whatever you would believe, whatever your belief is, your afterlife, whatever. Mm-hmm. Was he actually there, or was it Stamets' figment of his imagination to try and help him cope with it? Or are there other theories on that out there?
So I can look at it two ways. So part of me wants to say, for the sake of the story, I know there's the whole thing with the little blue spore that landed on Tilly, that might be somehow Culber is like Katra, quote unquote, or something. And so there's all of that.
Oh yeah,
so,
I forgot that one.
Yeah. So part of me wants to say that, yes, somehow his soul, whatever, is in the network. But the other part of me, from my psychology degree, wants to say no, that it's because when you are in a relationship with someone, even if it's just a deep friendship and you have a friendship with someone and you're interacting with them, things can happen, and your brain, in order to cope, will create in your head what you think is that person. It can continue them, and you can think that you're hearing them talk to you and guide you and that sort of thing. It's happened just because that connection and that bond with that person was so strong. So I'm torn on it. I'm leaning more towards no, because especially if that's the case, when the network was dying, I don't know if he would have survived. And so I don't know. I'm kind of torn in between the two. I'm waiting to see what happens in season 2, but part of the logical, rational part of me says no, that it was just Culber not hallucinating. That's the wrong term. Stamets. Sorry. I'm sorry. Again, it's been a long day. That it's hallucinating is the wrong word, but basically creating that to guide him, but it was in his head.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So devil's advocate, because I just thought of something sort of similar. So we'll just go
for it.
Okay. All right. So I lost my grandmother quite a while ago, but I was very, very close to her. And she appears in my dreams. And if you're, in a religion or, have a belief in an afterlife, that, people will say that's them coming to visit you. Like it is their spirit, and that it's not your brain thinking these things up. Like they are coming to guide you, to, comfort you, to share their spirit with you. Could that be similar? Can you see that?
I get what you're saying. I haven't ever had those experiences, but I know people that have. And so, yeah, I mean, it very well could be, it could be something very much like that somehow Hugh was coming to Paul in the network, because, I mean, it's the network. It could be anything, right? Mm-hmm. It's this crazy thing where, he meets his mirror self. Anyway, so, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of torn. I'm just a little bit leaning more towards it was just Paul creating this to help him. So I could sway either way.
Yeah. And because I was with you and I'm like, no, this is Paul, coping and, needing to see Hugh to help interpret. And it was his brain drawing on something familiar so that he could understand this world where he was trapped in this network. But then that whole thing with the dream, and, I think it's just a matter of faith. Like, do I believe that my grandmother is coming to me in dreams with her spirit, or is it just my brain missing her and needing that comfort, Mm-hmm. So I'm totally sitting on the fence.
See, and that's the thing. Like, one of my favorite classes was my behavioral neuroscience, and our brains are completely fascinating and do things that you would not think your brain would do. And some of those things are creating what we think is, someone talking to us, it's like it's the same thing when you think that your phone is vibrating in your pocket, but it's not. Your brain we've gotten so used to having our phones in our pockets, and most of us carry them on silent, and it vibrates, and, you look at it and it goes off, and your brain just hardwires. And so sometimes your brain you'll think that it's going off, and it's not. And so our brains can do a lot of things that trick us sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard. You're like, I'm on the fence, because it could very well be. And you want his soul, his spirit, his katra, whatever, to be in the network, because we still want him there, which he has said, Wilson Cruz has said he will be back in season 2. We don't know how, but so I think as the viewers, we want that. And so part of me wants that. I still want him to be on the show because I fell in love with this character. Mm-hmm. Tilly's my favorite, but Dr. Culber he's tied with Tilly. Yeah. So, we still want him to be there because we want his character to still be there. Mm-hmm. And so I think, but then the science aspect of me personally is like, I don't know.
Yeah. So with that aside, does it even matter, like, why he was there? Like, what was his purpose for being in the network? So just put aside the fact if it was him or if it was Stamets, whatever. Like, why did the writers put him in this network?
I wonder if, in a way, they're saying we could take it as anybody in this time of discovery, that's where you go. I don't know. That's in my head. Maybe that's where they go, because we don't fully understand what exactly this network is. They haven't fully described it to us. We don't know why there's all these connections and things like that. And so maybe it's something where, if when you die, that's where whatever of you goes. Because I look at a lot of it when they were showing the scenes inside the network, it looks very much like your neurons in your brain and all the connections and everything like that. And there's all these, and they go off everywhere. And, so that could just be, it's because your brain is your everything. And so that's where, if you die, that's where you go. I don't know.
Well, and we do know that season 2 is going to get more spiritual. So maybe this might be, a tactic of dealing with the afterlife, if there is one. And yeah, maybe that's, like you're saying, where you go.
Yeah.
Where your soul or your kachar goes.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's so exciting. I got the chills. All right. Well, unfortunately, he is in the network because he did get killed.
Yeah.
And there's been quite the hubbub about that. So, listeners, if you forgot, he examines Tyler /Voke because Tyler was having these nightmares and these flashbacks, and then Hugh discovers, oh my gosh, your skeleton and your organs, they've all been transformed and you're a Klingon and we need to stabilize what's going on. Your mind is fracturing. And so he does. He tries to stabilize Tyler, but that reminds him of this torture and this treatment that was going on when the Klingons did it. And Voke, in my mind, Voke asserts himself and snaps Culber's neck, killing him. So talk to me about this death of Hugh Culber.
I cried like a lot.
Yeah.
I screamed and I cried. I get that a lot of people are upset, and I was too. I was upset that, why do they have to kill his character? It served story. I get that, I'm upset about it. I really am. And I know there's talk about, they could somehow bring him back or something. Anyway, but on the other hand, I work in behavioral health, and I can see, it would have been anybody, if it wasn't Hugh that was examining him, and again, we're going back to this, he's the only person really we ever see.
Yep. So
he clearly is maybe the only doctor on board Discovery. I don't know why, whatever. But so obviously it wouldn't have been anybody else who would have caught it, because Dr. Culber is the smartest physician on this ship. If there is other physicians, he's the smartest. And so I can understand why, because it's, if you were in that position, I think if you have to look at it as if you were Tyler Voke and someone had found out and you're trying to figure out what's going on and you've got all this going on and you're confused about why you're having all these problems, you're going to defend yourself. And so it doesn't matter who it would have been. It could have been another character that it could have been Burnham. It could have been Tilly. It could have been somebody else confronting him about why his behavior was so erratic. And then we would still be just as mad that they killed this person for storyline. And so for me, I'm upset that they did it. But on the other hand, I can see why it happened. in the story based on the story itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it was needed. And, you know, again, with all the talk before Discovery started, you know, we're introducing this as a new way of storytelling. We're going to have these arcs. And I was thinking Game of Thrones.
Yeah, right?
I'm still upset they killed Ned. Anyways, and so I was thinking we're going to be losing characters left and right. Mm-hmm. And really, we only lost 2. Well, you know.
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh, she was, anyways, but Culber definitely was more secondary character, main character.
Well, and like I said, I don't know if, I think we're getting the main characters. Yeah. But we're just getting kind of more of them.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're not having like the 5 or the 7, which is what we've been used to in Trek up until this point. So I think our main cast is getting broader because we're still getting these in-depth characters. We're getting a lot of character development from a larger group of characters.
Yeah. So I was expecting actually to be losing more. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of prepared for it. And I do think that his death was needed. I think it was what really would happen for Tyler Voke and, you know, his situation there. It's
hard.
It is. And I don't like it. And I didn't like it in Game of Thrones. And, you know, but because you really get to know these characters, especially the way that they're telling the story with the development of each of them. So as a lot of fans were upset, not only just because it was the death of a main character, that it is now killing this gay relationship.
Which I don't think it is.
Okay.
You know, yes, Hugh at this point is gone, but that doesn't mean necessarily that the relationship is over. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard. It's hard to explain, and it's hard maybe to understand because yes, Stamets isn't going to have this actual person next to him continuing this relationship, but he still is in love with him. I don't think we're going to get in season 2. I don't think Paul is going to find somebody else. I don't think they're going to give him another relationship. And so he's still going to be able to have all these memories and continue the story. And he can share with Tilly, and he can share with Burnham, and he can share with some of the other crew members his relationship with Paul, with Hugh. My gosh.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday. You know, so he can share the stories that he's had and how much Hugh meant to him. And by that, the relationship to me isn't dead. Mm-hmm. Because he's going to be able to share those experiences with others and open up, I think. And hopefully maybe the writers will do it. It's up to the writers whether they want to explore that route. But I would love to see him, especially with Tilly. I think Paul and Tilly have gotten, I think I like their relationship. Their friendship is really great.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be that sharing of that together because they were both there. And I think Tilly understands that Hugh meant more to Paul than Paul was saying. And so I think maybe Paul will explore what it means to open up and share his relationship with others, with Tilly.
Yeah. And I agree. And it almost reminds me of like Cisco, because we know his relationship with his wife, Jennifer. Right, Jennifer? Okay, yeah. All right. That his relationship, you know, meant so much to him, and, you know, they shared so much, and then, you know, she was killed at Wolf 359. And it almost seems as their relationship continues in the next 2 seasons. Well, it's seasons 1 and 2 and 3 until he meets Cassidy, yeah. You know, but like, we know that he has this relationship with Jennifer. And I can see that, Paul's relationship with Hugh is going to continue in that way. Mm-hmm. I think and the writers could do something pretty awesome in showing going through the grieving process, with one of the characters.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think we never really see any of that, like, ever. You're just like, oh, the next, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, next week. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a great opportunity to go through that and still keep that relationship alive that way. And then maybe, season 3, season 4, that Paul will be involved with another person.
Exactly. And that's how I look at it is that it's not over. It's still there. It's just in a different form.
Mm-hmm. And
relationships take all sorts of different forms. And so, and again, it's up to the writers. So we'll see what happens. But for me, I don't think it's done. They're still in a relationship, whether Hugh's alive or not. So they had a video from when the cast was at STLV last year. Mm-hmm. And Wilson was talking about him coming on and his excitement for being on Discovery. And so this is why I also don't think his character is gone just yet, because I think his excitement for being on the show is great. And he's also mentioned that he's coming back for season 2. We just don't know how. But I think they put out on YouTube, they put a video of their creation, might have put a video up, and I'm going to have to look and find it. So listeners, hold me to it if I don't find it. I will try and look and see if I can find it. But his talk and what he spoke about moved me to tears. I don't know if you were there that day last year.
Yeah, I was. It was the Wednesday, the first day. Yeah. Yeah.
When he was on stage with Mary Chieffo and Ken Mitchell. Uh-huh. And I cried.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, now you're talking about it, I remember.
You're remembering it.
I'm feeling the emotions that I had, because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is amazing, because he spoke from his heart.
Yeah.
And, I just instantly fell in love with Wilson Cruz. And I'm like, dude, for not knowing Trek, he has embraced it. Mm-hmm. And he's done all of his homework and, talking about how much this means to him, and obviously what the fans, bring to the character, because he was very appreciative of all the fans and everything, because they were at the San Diego Comic-Con just before that, right?
I think so. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And then they came here to SDLV last year. And yeah, he just, to me, really embodied what Star Trek was. And he was super excited for this role.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love, he engages with the fans really well. And to share an experience I had. So we were talking off mic about it a little bit, but they were walking around in the vendor's room on Wednesday last year. And I was a little nervous, because you never know if they're going to be comfortable with it, but they were talking with one of the vendors, and I went up to him, and he wasn't talking with the vendor specifically, but I went up to him and I thanked him for what he said on stage. Mm-hmm. He shared a personal experience with a family member with him, and I got a hug from Wilson Cruz. It was super awesome. And, I politely asked him if I could take a picture with him, and he said yes. And so I will put that up. If you're going to Vegas, definitely, he's absolutely wonderful. And he's wonderful to engage with online if you haven't. He was student director, drum major in band, and he posted a picture, and I was too. And so we went back and forth about talking about being in band. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just like the rest of us.
Oh my gosh. How did I miss that? Oh my gosh. I follow you and him.
Yeah. It was a while ago. It was a few months back. Mm-hmm. He posted like a black and white picture of him when he was in band. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was in band too. And so we asked each other what we played. And then he said he was drum major. And I was like, oh my gosh, so was I.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it was super fun. And so I'm really excited. Excited for him to be there this year too.
I love how involved in social media the actors are with Discovery. Like, it's just, it adds another dimension to the show that we'd never had previously.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, it's great. And yeah, they're just, I love that they're so approachable. And it's not just because they're online and they're on social media and they're interacting with the fans and things like that. I think a lot of actors who are in Star Trek, they're very approachable, and I love that about them. And I think it's because we all have this shared admiration for the show and what it means to everybody. And I think even sometimes these actors, and they come into it and they might not have been Trekkies before, but they fall in love with it too, I think, a little bit. Maybe even just a little bit, and it's great to see their love for it. And then, so it's just this shared admiration for something, which I think brings a lot of us together.
Yeah. And I think it brings out their inner nerd as well.
Yes.
And they all have it. That's what's great,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's super exciting. And I think it's going to be, I know a lot of, there's been some speculation about this year where Anthony Rapp will also be there, about them doing a space boobs photo op.
Ooh.
I don't know. They haven't put it out yet, but that would be really cool, you have to admit.
Yes.
That would be really awesome. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah. Very good.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Do you think that it would have been as great if he had been in the same color uniform, the blue? As everybody else.
Right.
Because there's only a few people that we see with the white uniform. And oddly, I think one of them was not medical at all. Because he was in like it was magic. There was the guy and he was in the bay and the shuttle bay and he had a white uniform. But I don't think he was medical, was he?
I assumed he was.
Maybe
because
he was.
Because I think he was there to work on the Gormagander.
Maybe, yeah.
And so I assumed medical. But, yeah.
Now I have to go back and watch because I don't remember. But do you think it would have been as striking if they had just been in the same blue uniforms as everybody else? Because everybody else is blue uniforms.
Yeah. Well, not as striking, but Wilson Cruz, he can pull off anything in my book.
I totally agree.
So I think the white, is very, very smart on him, and it definitely sets him apart. And I'm wondering and I'm hoping, well, we saw some pictures, of season 2. So maybe this graduation of introducing more colors and stuff like that in the uniforms, to get more in line with TOS, right? It's going to have to get there eventually.
Maybe. So. They could just be like, well, we're Discovery and we don't do the same as everybody else.
Well, they're still Starfleet,
I know. I don't know.
No, I like them in the whites. I did worry about the fluids in the bloods, but you answered that question, so I'm all good. And so, yeah, I hope we do get to still have that delineation between departments and maybe hopefully a little bit more. I would like to see that.
Yeah, because it's hard to notice so white is medical and then everyone else wears blue. And then it's hard. Okay, wait, are you engineering? Are you security? What are you? The contrast. Again, that's because we're so used to it.
Right.
Up until now, we've always had this contrast between divisions. And so you're and I think that's where a lot of angst comes from people, is because we're just, it's only 7 main characters, or it's only 5, or we have all these different colors. And so I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know in Enterprise, they're all in the blue jumpsuit type of things. Mm-hmm. And so even with Trip and Malcolm, you know, they're different divisions, engineering and security, and they're wearing the same blue jumper suit.
But they had like the pipe, the pin.
Yeah, there was a little
colored
bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And even Captain Archer in this blue, you know, and it's like they all were the same. It's like, oh, okay, that's going to have to change eventually. We've got to get to TOS. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So next season, like I said, like it's going to open up. It sounds like more of these characters, like the bridge crew.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see the many characters and not just our main 5, our main 7. Yeah.
I agree.
So
it'll be exciting.
All right, Hayley. So Dr. Hugh Culber, final thoughts. Mm-hmm.
You know, I think I fell in love with his character the minute he came on screen. And added to the show, I think, kind of a softness that it needed, because we can say Discovery's pretty harsh. I mean, it's not, I mean, none of Trek is like super soft and roses and daisies and whatnot, but I appreciated that he kind of, even when he was being in charge and saying, no, you're going to do this, it was still done with this softness that I really appreciated and I really enjoyed. And so I'm in whatever form the writers want to give us. I am ready to see more of Dr. Culber, and more of Wilson Cruz. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when you said it was just, he does bring this softness to the show that so needed. I'm so glad you said that, because that is so exactly what his character does. Soften Stamets right up. Even in his interactions with Burnham and Tilly, like there is just something where he's a very calming influence, but yet still gets the job done. Like he is a very competent doctor. I put him right up there at the top. I would definitely go to him. And his relationship with Stamets and he's got a little bit of sarcastic remarks, but they're always given with love. And it's like, man, how do you do that? You know, it's like when
maybe that should be a question we should ask Wilson in Vegas.
Cause when Stamets was, had the head injury, and he's like, well, you don't need that part of the brain. It's only for feelings. And he's like, well, maybe you do in case you want to, you know, have a feeling later, you know, I just thought that was so funny, but said with love. And you're right from the get-go. It's like, there he was on screen again in the white uniform, which maybe set it apart, but it's like, you noticed him and you noticed what he brought to, the show. He was integral, even though he wasn't in every single episode. But what he brought is just amazing and added this depth to almost every single character that he interacted with. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the only time he probably wasn't kind of in that soft mode, we can kind of say, is when he interacted with Lorca.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
You know, that was probably the only time that you didn't really see it. But I love that, because knowing what we know now about Lorca, he had every right to not be that kind of tender person that, you know, we envision a lot of doctors to be. It was, no, you know, and I was like, yes. Because I also think that he might have seen through Lorca way sooner than anybody else. I think maybe he kind of noticed it beforehand. And so, I mean, there's that possibility if Lorca had caught on that Hugh knew, it might have been Lorca that killed Hugh instead of Tyler Vogt, you know? So I think he kind of saw through that facade.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I agree. All righty. Well, Hayley, it was so awesome to have you on the edge. I mean, just you and me, finally.
I I know, right?
Because I've been on Standard Orbit. You've been on Earl Grey on our little crossovers, which have been so fun. But now finally on the Edge talking Discovery. So
yes, I know. It's nice. And no boys.
I know, right? Oops. Love you, Patrick. Well, where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to continue talking about Wilson Cruz?
People can find me on Twitter. I'm the Trekkie01D, and I'm also on the Babel Conference, so you can also find me on there. But Twitter's really good place to find me at.
And they can find you here on the network every Monday.
Yes, every Monday here on the network on Standard Orbit. It's super fun, and it's going to be great. Our last one was really fun.
It was. I listen every week, so. It's been fun talking about Culber today, but it isn't the only thing we've been discussing on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Meta Treks.
You can see Gene Roddenberry playing with the idea of what we could become given our full potential. And the aliens that have achieved that looking down and kind of criticizing or examining or evaluating humanity from a moral standpoint, almost like Q does in putting humanity on trial. There's a sense in which humanity is being judged by these morally superior aliens that are genuinely pacifist.
Or in the case of Q, genuinely narcissistic.
The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
He's not trying to be a Starfleet officer. He doesn't care about doing that in the context of, well, because I want to prove that I'm a Starfleet officer. But I think that, and again, this is what perhaps in hindsight, after the fact, he starts to realize that who he is aligns itself or can align itself with what Starfleet stands for.
To the journey!
I was wondering why they didn't do a mind meld at the end of the episode.
Why would they do that?
Because Tressa has 90 some odd years, 94 or 96 years of life experience, and Tuvok is a Vulcan, so he can mind meld. Why wouldn't he do that?
Because there's no reason to do that. You're just going around mind melding with people willy-nilly just because they're old and you want their knowledge? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, it's like space genealogy.
Dude, boundaries.
Melodic Treks.
And, I talked to the producers when I first did the show, and the first thing they had me do was take a combination of the dun da 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 da, Sandy Courage wonderful horn theme, and Jerry's da 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 da, his theme for the first movie, and make a theme out of those, combine them. So I did it electronically, and they said good enough, and I said, look, this is not my specialty, and they said, never mind, you got it. So 18 years later, that was it.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place is to join the larger conversation in the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's Babel, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trekfm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select The Edge. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Amy, where can people find you when you're not on The Edge?
Well, you can find me here on the network. I host, what do I host? Oh yeah, Earl Grey with Justin and Richard. That is our Trek FM podcast of the next generation. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson and tweeting about my Deep Space Nine. And my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. So you can find me there. If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more, available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/trekfm. We'd also like to thank our associate producers. They are Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner. Thank you so much for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge. Thank you for listening, and join us next time to see what's happening on the edge of Federation space.